Serial killers. Just the mention of them gives us chills. These are individuals who slipped through the cracks, evaded capture for decades, and in some cases may still be out there, somewhere. Unlike your average criminal, these killers don't just commit horrific acts, they mastered the art of staying hidden. These killers slipped away so gracefully, you would think they were made of Vaseline. From cryptic messages to gruesome scenes, their ability to outsmart law enforcement has left a long-lasting legacy of fear and intrigue. But beneath the horror lies something deeper. What drove them? Were they calculating geniuses, exploiting society's blind spot, or disturbed individuals acting on impulses we struggle to comprehend? Today, we're peeling back the layers on some of the most infamous serial killers who are nearly impossible to catch, or never caught at all. From Jack the Ripper to Zodiac Killer, we're exploring the gaps they exploited, the chilling motives, and the questions they left unanswered. A gentle reminder to double check those locks and maybe leave the light on as we begin. Let's start with the most notorious and chilling of killers, the Zodiac Killer. In the late 1960s and early 70s, Zodiac terrorized Northern California with a spree of at least 5 confirmed murders. Though he claimed to have killed 37, he just didn't kill. Oh no, he liked to brag about it. And brag he did. Sending cryptic letters to newspapers, he taunted the authorities with ciphers, some of which were only solved decades later. Imagine the gall. This was before Twitter, folks, so he had to literally mail in the trolling. And by trolling, I mean terrorizing an entire region with mind games. I don't know what's scarier, meeting him in a dark alleyway or having to face him in a game of Scrabble. Zodiac wasn't just a murderer, he was a puppet master. The ciphers weren't just puzzles, they were psychological weapons designed to instill fear and maintain his control over the narrative. His choice of victims, often couples, suggests unresolved anger or jealousy, a dark vendetta against the intimacy he lacked in his own life. Narcissistic, calculating, controlling, Zodiac didn't just want to kill, he wanted to be remembered, cemented himself in true crime infamy forever. To Zodiac, every move was a twisted performance, with the world as his audience. His ego wasn't satisfied with taking lives. He wanted to toy with everyone who tried to stop him. Zodiac's combination of timing, misdirection, and media manipulation made him untouchable. He chose an era when forensic science was primitive and weaponized public fascination with his taunting letters. Law enforcement was bogged down with limited coordination and resources, leaving Zodiac free to create his lasting legacy. In a sense, he made the police work for him, spreading his name far and wide. Something no amount of wanted posters could have achieved. Zodiac didn't just escape justice, he outplayed it at every turn. In 2020, an international team of codebreakers solved the infamous 340 cipher, a message that revealed Zodiac's chilling taunts, but unfortunately, no clues to his identity. In 2021, a group of ex-law enforcement officers claimed they cracked the case using DNA genealogy databases, naming Gary Francis Post as the Zodiac. However, critics argue the evidence is circumstantial and not definitive. Fast forward to 2024, where investigators raised questions about whether the focus on past suspects like Arthur Leigh Allen distracted from critical evidence. One thing remained clear: Zodiac exploited the lack of modern forensic tools in the 1960s, leaving behind a trail so cold you could say the case is frozen in time. Jack the Ripper, the original boogeyman. Back in 1888, London's East End became his hunting ground, and the poor residents of Whitechapel could do little more than lock their doors and hope they weren't next. Jack targeted vulnerable women, often prostitutes, and brutally murdered at least 5 victims. The so-called canonical 5. Some believe the number could be as high as 11. Others suggest even more victims may have been unrecorded and undocumented. Jack's murders weren't just random acts of violence. They were calculated displays of rage, his surgical precision, hints at someone who saw his victims as less than human, perhaps a reflection of his own deep-seated hatred of frustration with societal norms. The gruesome nature of his crime suggests he reveled in the shock and chaos they created. Let's not forget the setting: the cramped, dimly lit alleys of Victorian London weren't just the backdrop, they were his accomplice. A place where despair and desperation were as thick as the fog, and indoor plumbing was still a luxury most couldn't afford. Jack thrived in an environment that made detection nearly impossible. The whole neighborhood might as well have been designed for a horror story. Jack's crimes occurred in a city drowning in crime and chaos, where resources were stretched thin. Black history lights, reliable witness accounts, and modern forensic technology made tracking him nearly impossible. You're talking about an era where iPhone meant, yes, I'll phone you. Despite all the advancement in technology, you could say that we're still in the dark as far as Jack Ripper is concerned. Jack the Ripper preyed on society's most vulnerable, ensuring his victims wouldn't immediately garner the attention they deserve. No one is going to miss the ladies of the night the same way your neighborhood dentist would be missed. That's why finding out anything about Jack the Ripper is like pulling teeth. In 2019, DNA analysis from a shawl linked to one of the victims pointed to Aaron Kosmoskinski, a Polish barber who was already a prime suspect in 1888. However, contamination over the decades makes this evidence controversial. Fast forward to 2024, and new theories question whether the Ripper may have had accomplices or even been a woman. Could you imagine one day we could be referring to him as, or her, as Jacqueline the Ripper? Who knows? What's certain is that the Victorian era lacks of forensic tools has ensured the mystery remains unsolved for hundreds of years. Now, let's jazz it up, literally. The Axeman of New Orleans wasn't just a brutal murderer. He had a strange obsession with jazz music. Between 1918 and 1919, he attacked at least 12 people with an axe, killing 6 of them. Then, well, he vanished into the night. In a bizarre twist, the Axeman once sent a letter to the local newspaper promising to spare anyone who was playing jazz on a particular night. Jazz, the ultimate life-saving playlist. Imagine the fear that swept through New Orleans. Families huddled together, clutching instruments they hadn't touched in years, just hoping the sound of a trombone would keep them safe. It's the only time in history where a bad trumpet playing might have been considered heroic. The X-Men's letter suggests he thrived out on control, turning an entire city's fear into a personal game. His random choice of victims made him unpredictable, and his fixation on jazz hints at someone who reveled in chaos and the cultural zeitgeist of the time. Was he a frustrated artist? A music critic gone rogue? We'll never know. But what if it wasn't just about control? The X-Men might have had a deep psychological need for attention, a craving to watch a city dance to his chaotic tune, both literally and figuratively. His method of killing, with an axe no less, implies a desire for brutality over efficiency. This wasn't about precision, it was about terror. The Axeman's unpredictability and psychological manipulation, like the infamous jazz letter, made him an almost mythical figure. By targeting his victims seemingly at random, he ensured there were no clear pattern for rescuers to follow, allowing him to vanish as mysteriously as he arrived. And let's not forget the New Orleans of 1919 wasn't exactly equipped with cutting-edge forensic technology. The crime scenes were chaotic, evidence handling was rudimentary, and the Axemen exploited every crack in the system. He knew exactly what tune they were playing. To quote Nikocado Avocado, he was always 2 steps ahead. 2 steps ahead. In a city famous for its vibrant nightlife, the Axeman was a criminal maestro, using the very culture of New Orleans as his smokescreen. The Axeman's letter remains one of the most perplexing pieces of evidence. Some theorists now believe the letter was written by a journalist or a musician looking to boost New Orleans jazz culture. In 2024, historians revisited the crimes suggesting that Axeman might have been more than one person, potentially connected to an organized crime ring. Others argue that the jazz ankle is nothing more than a macabre joke designed to make a city already drenched in fear second guess its every move. Despite these theories, his true identity remains a mystery. From 1935 to 1938, Cleveland wasn't just famous for its steel industry. It also had the unfortunate distinction of being home to the Cleveland torso murderer. This killer dismembered at least 12 victims, with many remains scattered across the city. That's one scavenger hunt no one wants to go on. By targeting the city's downtrodden, primarily transient individuals like homeless people, struggling laborers, and sometimes even sex workers, the torso murderer ensured his victims wouldn't be immediately missed. Let's face it, in the 1930s, if you were living on the edge of society, you probably weren't getting daily wellness checks either. As for the dismemberment, it wasn't just a gruesome hobby, it was strategic. Returning his victims into literal jigsaw puzzles, he made identification nearly impossible. Was this his way of taunting investigators, or just his idea of tidying up? Either way, it's clear the guy had some major control issues, and a total disregard for human decency. A torso murderer's methods of targeting vulnerable individuals and scattering remains made it almost impossible for police to connect the dots. Literally, the lack of modern forensic tools didn't help either. Forget DNA testing back then. They were lucky if they could get fingerprints off a soggy sandwich. And if that wasn't enough, the Great Depression had everyone's priorities elsewhere. When you're trying to keep bread on the table, hunting a torso-obsessed lunatic isn't exactly at the top of the to-do list. Then there's Elliot Ness, guy famous for bringing down Al Capone. Apparently, he didn't bring the same game to Cleveland. His idea of catching the killer, burning down an entire shantytown. Sure, it sent a message, but the killer probably roasting marshmallows a mile away. The torso murderer wasn't just elusive, he was Cleveland's version of a ghost story come to life, a true nightmare. Fast forward to 2024, and experts still can't crack the case. Forensic psychologists think the killer might have had medical training, which would explain his precision handiwork and make him even harder to identify. Let's be real, even with today's technology, we'd still be scratching our heads and saying, so anyone got a clue? The Cleveland torso murderer remains as much a mystery as those missing puzzle pieces. Italy is interesting as for pasta. Fast forward to the picturesque hills of Tuscany, where in the 1970s and 80s, a killer terrorized couples seeking a little romance known as the Monster of Florence. He murdered at least 8 couples, 16 victims in total, for a span of decades, always targeting lovers parked in the secluded cars. So this is why parents warn you not to go to Makeout Mountain. Monster of Florence didn't just stop at murders. This guy had added the creepy touch of taking bodies parts as trophies. If that doesn't ruin date night, I don't know what will. The monster's choice of secluded couples and his gruesome acts suggested a killer driven by voyeuristic tendencies and a deep-seated resentment towards intimacy. You might be thinking, what kind of monster keeps human parts as souvenirs? Well, this one. The trophy taken added an extra layer of depravity, hinting at a desire to retain control or relive the crimes. Maybe he wasn't just murdering couples. Maybe he was targeting the love they represented. Something he could never possess. A dark, lonely monster, obsessed with his own twisted version of romance. The monster exploited Italy's remote landscapes and fragmented police jurisdictions. Conflicting theories ranging from a lone killer to mafia involvement further muddled the waters, leaving investigators chasing shadows while the monster stayed steps ahead. His choice of remote lovers lanes ensured there were no witnesses and delayed response times, giving him the perfect getaway window. The lack of collaboration between jurisdictions was like a gift wrapped in alibi. In recent years, investigators have focused on possible connections to organized crime, with theories suggesting the monster may have been a hired killer. Others speculate he was part of a network of criminals or a copycat spree that confused investigators. The fragmented Italian police system also continues to face criticism for its handling of the case. To critics, it might as well have been investigated by Mario and Luigi. Fast forward to 2024, and we have the best resources and technologies ever. The evidence from crime scenes was re-examined, but no new leads emerged. Yes, that's right. The Monster of Florence remains a morbid enigma. He may be gone, but his legend continues to haunt Tuscan countrysides, as chilling as late-night drive-thrus those shadowy hills. So how do serial killers like this manage to evade justice? As you've seen, it's often a combination of timing, circumstance, and outright cunning. From the Zodiac's exploitation of the 60s, lack of forensic technology, to the Axeman turning fear into folklore. Each killer knew how to manipulate their environment and stay one step ahead. And let's not forget society's own failings, factual laws, enforcement, limited resources, and sadly, the tendency to overlook the most vulnerable among us. But the real enigma isn't just how they escaped justice, it's why they did what they did. Were they motivated by control, rage, or a craving for infamy? These killers left a staggering trail of victims, each representing not just a loss of life, but an unresolved question. Are their secrets buried with them, or are they still linger, quietly watching the world that failed to stop them? Thank you for joining me on this unsettling journey into the minds and methods of serial killers that got away. If you're drawn to the dark corners of crime and mystery, hit that like and subscribe button. Don't forget to comment, and don't ever forget to check the shadows, because you never know who or what might be watching you.